Hi everyone, my name is Nick, and last week my houseplant show and tell series evolved into a mini houseplant tour series when I took you all on a tour of my entire Hoya collection, which just has a few too many specimens to round them all up and do a formal sit-down video. And today that transformation continues because I'm going to take you on a tour of my entire Philodendron collection. Now, I don't have as many Philodendron as I do Hoya. In this case, I'm physically unable to round up my Philodendron for a formal sit-down video because many of them are climbing up surfaces in my home that I've attached them to grow to their fullest potential, so I literally cannot remove them. And I'm also going to lump Syngoniums in today's video for many reasons. One, they're very closely related to Philodendron. Two, I only have a few of them. And three, they are also in a similar situation to my Philodendrons where they are attached to surfaces in many cases. And I just don't feel like doing a really tiny tour for my Syngonium collection, so I'm just gonna get it over with today. So without further ado, I really hope you enjoy my Philodendron and Syngonium collection. Let's start today's tour in the bedroom once again, mostly for continuity reasons, but also because it just feels good to get this shelf unit out of the way first, as there's just so much going on. Although I have reorganized since my Hoya tour, but there's still a lot. It's just a little less disastrous now, if you will. And these are from IKEA. I know I mentioned last time, but just to reiterate, and there's two of them. There's 1 2 unit and then one. And I have fixed grow lights into each section, and these are listed on my Amazon associate page, which I will have linked below. So if we start at the top left and work our way down, this one right here is a Syngonium auritum. This is just like a plain green Syngonium that I really appreciate for just its like plain green glossy leaves, but also it produces lobes or like more mature foliage pretty easily. It's put off a couple new leaves since I got it, which I got this one from Steve's Leaves, which of course I have to mention that you can use code NICK15 to save 15% on stevesleaves.com, except on the auction plans, which I think this goes till the end of March, but perhaps beyond. And if we move down right here, I have this Philodendron White Princess. Had this one for a couple years. It's really started to work its way out of the planter. I really should repot it in like the next month or two. And I really appreciate the variegation on this plant. I'm not really like a sucker for variegation, but this has some really, really cool variegation. I really enjoy it. And over here I have a Philodendron Painted Lady. Now this is definitely the better looking one of my two. I have another one that you'll see in a couple minutes. But this one has a lot less of that variegation that Painted Ladies are known for. They're both from the same exact plant. This is one I actually propagated off of it when the other one was in danger. And this one has grown very well. However, these two new leaves that it put off look a little sketchy. There's some damage on them, so I couldn't find any pests, but it looks reminiscent of like thrift damage. So I'm probably just going to remove this new growth if the problem persists and take it from there. I'll just cut it back to where the growth looks good and let it grow from there. Speaking of thrips problem, you might have seen in a recent video that this Philodendron Florida was having a thrips problem, which is cured of now, which I did remove the new leaves that were on this plant, as I find that the thrips are really attracted to the new leaves on my Philodendrons. All of my Philodendrons, I have to be wary of the new leaves and make sure that they don't have thrips on them, which maybe we'll stumble across some today, I don't know, but this has been pest-free ever since I took care of it in that video we did a couple months ago. So this new leaf is looking fantastic, and the leaf shape of this Philodendron is just to die for. It's really one of my favorite leaf shapes that I have in my home. I've been obsessed with it for a couple years now, and you're going to see it on a couple other Philodendrons, including this Philodendron squamiferum right here, which has very similar foliage, as you can see, a little bit different, very, very similar lobes, as you can see, but if I just pan back over to the Philodendron Florida, you can see how these are a little bit different. But the main difference that you'll notice with the squamiferum is the petioles. So I'll zoom in right here. So you can see those red fuzzy petioles. And it's like a really interesting kind of fuzz. It's a lot different than like some other fuzzy houseplants that I grow in my home, like this Hoya globulosa right here, which has like really, really fuzzy leaves. I know you can't really see it, but it feels just like so super fuzzy. This is not that kind of fuzz here. Let me zoom back in. This is more like plant material being expelled from the petiole. It's really quite funky. So really a cool houseplant, and I've been hearing that this one has becoming been becoming more available at like big box stores lately, which is very exciting. It's a really, really cool houseplant. I highly recommend giving it a go. Giving it a grow, you could say. I don't think I have any more up here, but let's move down to this guy right here, which is a Philodendron Hederaceum variegata. And this thing blows my mind. I've been seeing this thing for ridiculous prices online, which is crazy because in my mind it's just like the Marble Queen version of the Heartleaf Philodendron in comparison to like a Marble Queen pothos. But for some reason, it's, you know, wildly expensive. I don't know if it's wildly popular, but it's definitely a little too expensive for my taste. But it is quite beautiful, I get it, but it still has that kind of like not great variegation that I'm personally obsessed with in comparison to the Philodendron White Princess that I shared with you earlier. And I don't think there's any more on that shelf either. I don't have as many philodendrons as I mentioned in the intro as I do Hoyas, but they're definitely widespread. There's a Philodendron MAMEI in here. It has been struggling for me through the past year. I get it to put off some good leaves inside the plastic bag. It's literally just a Ziploc bag that I have on top of it. And then I take it off thinking it's okay, and then the leaves get brown and yellow. So right now it's back in the Ziploc bag. It's gonna stay there for a little while. I see some new growth coming in back there, but it's gonna be inside this bag for probably the entire growing season. I have a Syngonium Podophyllum variegata right here. This thing hasn't been like the most reliable Syngonium for me. It doesn't hold on to its foliage as well as some of the others. So I don't know, but I might just propagate this one as it does have some pretty nice foliage on it, and it has some new growth coming in down here as you can see as well. So it's not a lost cause. It's just not the easiest houseplant for how popular it is. And then let me just move this Sansevieria as I have this. I believe this is the Philodendron radiatum. Let me just turn it real quick so you can get a little better look at the leaves. Maybe. It's really dirty down here too, I apologize. But the foliage isn't that big. I obviously am not growing it in a position where it can really get, I'm trying to get a better view, but I think this is as good as it gets. I'm trying to get it to grow bigger leaves, but I'm also not really giving it like a support to grow up. So maybe I'll just like propagate it and get it in a better position. But I also just don't mind this like funky little plant that just is spilling over the edge of this pot. I think it's pretty neat, so I don't really have a complaint, and it's obviously healthy, so I really like it. And I have a couple more. So I have two Philodendron HASTATUMs, like the silver swords down here. There's one right here, which is in a little bit better condition than the other one, believe it or not, because this one looks terrible. There's another one over here that is also not looking great. I don't know if it's going to focus, and it's got some new growth going on inside the planter, so I'm still holding on to it, but I have not really had good luck with these plants before. I'm struggling with them for sure. Give me your tips if you can, but right now I think it's just a waiting game for it to get acclimated to my space. Speaking of waiting games, I have the other Philodendron painted lady that I mentioned earlier. This one has much more pronounced variegation, but obviously the leaves are much smaller. This one was practically on death's door. I propagated the other one that I have on the higher level of the shelf to make sure that I still had a plant in case this one did die, but I was able to salvage most of the plant. Of course, a lot of the foliage did not make it, but now it is regrowing. The leaves are coming in very small right now because these are just the first couple leaves, but hopefully by the end of this growing season, this plant is looking much better. And before we go over to that trellis that you might have saw at the beginning, I'm just gonna pop over to this right here, which is new to me. I just got this to give myself a little bit more room. Well, actually I got a different one for below the other trellis. We'll go over that later, it doesn't really matter, but I moved this one from the other trellis where I was growing some Hoyas before in my Hoya tour video, if you watched, and I got something exactly the same for over there. Anyway, there is this Philodendron BIPENNIFOLIum AUREA, so it's like a lemon lime version, and this one is just getting going for me. You can see the new leaves coming in are kind of a little bit on the struggle bus there, taking their time to unfurl, but I feel like in a month or two, once the growing season hits, this thing will really start growing along. So I'm just gonna be patient with this and perhaps give it a little larger planter too. I think it's time to get it out of that grow planter within the next month or so as the growing season is just beginning. And let's move up here real quick. I have what was sold to me as a Philodendron domesticum. This was on Glass Houseworks, if you're familiar, so they're not really known for having the most accurate plant IDs, but it's pretty neat. It's just this jumbled mess of philodendron leaf that doesn't really look like many other philodendrons that we see on the market. It was dirt cheap when I got it. It was just one vine, and I've propagated it into like 6, and it's just a mess, and I freaking love it. It's really nothing special, but that's also kind of what I love about it. And then I have this Philodendron hederaceum lemon lime. I think this needs a drink. It's looking like it probably could use a drink, but it's quite long and luscious. I had it trailing down the side of my refrigerator at my old apartment, which it received a little bit better light, but it's still growing, as you can see here. I think it fits the bill. If the shoe fits, I know that's not an accurate use of the phrase, but I just wanted to say it. So let's actually move over to the trellis now. So you can see I have this whole mess right here. It's kind of the theme of my home, just like lovely messes. And it goes all the way to the ceiling. So that main one up top is probably the easiest one to start with. This is a Philodendron erubescens red emerald, a rather common philodendron. This one was not like a popular one back when I used to sell it at the plant store, but like, look at it. It's freaking amazing. It grew up to my ceiling in like 2 years, maybe 3 years maximum. So that's pretty incredible for as far as philodendrons go. And the leaves just look so incredible. They're getting such like this deep green color, and the red stems is fantastic. I don't know how well you can see it because the lighting's not amazing, but let's work our way back down, which you can see this thing really does take over most of the trellis. But there are like 9 plants, I think, on this thing here. Most of them are aroids. I do have this random Drymonia here just because I didn't have anywhere else to put it. But let's just start in the back corner from here on out. So I have this Philodendron Bernardo Pazii. This was on a moss pole. I just moved this onto the trellis like a couple weeks ago, so the leaves are still working themselves into place. You can see some of them are looking kind of awkward. But I think it's a fantastic philodendron, a great introduction philodendron to some of the more out ones once you're like looking to step beyond some of the more available ones that you can find. This one's not going to break your bank, but it's still going to give you those fun out there philodendron vibes. So highly recommend. And then this one in front of it is basically just a spindly vine. As you can see, all the foliage is kind of hiding up here. So this is a mystery plant to me still at this point. It was sold to me as a Syngonium. The foliage doesn't look that amazing either. It's like this like tripart Syngonium. You can see some new growth coming in right here. Which they hold onto the wings, which I really appreciate. Because I didn't always have this growing like on a trellis setting, but it's clearly been growing a lot for me as it's pretty tall. It just doesn't hold on to its foliage, which is something I find with some Syngoniums. Like the variegated one that's down there, you can't see it, but sometimes it's just a little bit more difficult to get your Syngoniums to hold on to more foliage, and this one just is clearly not meant to be like grown indoors. But yeah, I don't really know what this houseplant is, but it's definitely either a Syngonium or a philodendron, so fits the bill for today's video. And I also have this regular Philodendron BIPENNIFOLIUM, just the standard one. What else do we got? I have another Philodendron squamiferum. This one has a little bit of the damage on the leaves from the thrips. I'm pretty sure the problem is resolved. We will find out as this new leaf unfurls. I have checked it so far. It does seem to be thrips free, so thank goodness. A couple more over here. There's this Philodendron CAMPOSPORTOANUM. Wow, that's a mouthful. Not looking amazing, but I'm hoping that as the growing season progresses that it will look better, as it did look a little bit more healthy right before I moved here when I was in my old home. And then this Philodendron Burl Marks Fantasy, which is going up pretty high. All of these start down here. There's no illusions going on. So the Burl Marks Fantasy starts down here. This one leaf is starting to look a little sad. And then the CAMPOSPORTOANUM is there, Squamiferum there, the red emerald there. Oh, and I think I have one more actually that I almost forgot about. Good thing I went down here. So there's a Syngonium macrophyllum, which is what's going up all here. And it kind of looks very similar, but you can tell the difference because the Philodendron red emerald has these really shiny glossy leaves, while the Syngonium macrophyllum leaves are completely matte, which I really enjoy. I believe that is all the philodendrons that I have in my bedroom though. Let me just back up so you can get a look, and that is helping me realize that no, that's not true. I do have one more to share with you, my Philodendron atabapoense right here, which has some really lovely purple on the back sides of the leaves. I've been talking about this houseplant a lot in my videos, so I will leave it at that. And then before we go out to the living room, I should show you Muffin, who is sleeping. Oh, she's waking up, but she was sleeping. Okay, let's go over to the living room, which is looking like it normally does. Let's go over to the mirror. So first and foremost, I have this Philodendron gloriosum, which as the name suggests is freaking glorious. It's looking fantastic. It's really loving its place here on the floor next to the mirror ever since I moved it here like 6 months ago. You can see there's a new leaf coming in right here, which I'm excited because it's going to fill in this gap right here that I have. There's another new leaf coming in. I honestly should think about getting this a little bit of a larger planter, as this thing really does need to be repotted yearly. In my experiences, the leaves will kind of reach the plants grow like across the surface of the planter. And maybe it's just because I have mine a little bit deeper in the planter, but they won't start to crawl off the edge. So they'll just kind of like reach the edge of the planter here and start to like suffocate themselves. I'll have like the leaves snap and break. This one is fine. It'll probably put off one more leaf, okay, but then from there I'm probably gonna have to go ahead and propagate it. So instead of propagating it, I could just give it a larger planter. So just considering that. And then I have this Philodendron MAYOI. This is probably the best foliage on the plant. It's some of the newer foliage, but there's a bunch of it if we work our way up, and it's situated on the top of the shelf in the back. Also next to this Philodendron brantianum, which also works its way down. It doesn't hold on to its foliage as well as some other philodendrons in my experience, but it will still grow. Absolutely, maybe it just needs to acclimate a little bit better. And I also have another Philodendron Bernardopazia up there, but I just like my other ones so much better, and I have struggled to find a space for this houseplant. I wouldn't even really consider that a spot for it. I don't think it looks that amazing. So I don't know. I think this is one that I might consider like trading to one of my friends or gifting to someone that I care about or something. I don't know, but I think it served its purpose. I have my other one that's going to climb up to the ceiling in no time. Oh, I should mention my Soltex Solution Aspect Light, which gives my Philodendron Bloody Mary here some really incredible light, which you can also use code NIC2022 to save 15% on any grow light on soltexsolutions.com. Highly, highly recommend. I've had it in my home for years, and it has done such an amazing job getting my plants to grow. Speaking of this Bloody Mary, I've recently put it up a little bit closer to this light here when I just put this thing in the corner recently, and I'm really happy I did because now my Philodendron Bloody Mary is putting up all this new growth. So I'm really hopeful that as the growing season gets going along, this new growth is going to get a little bit nicer and larger because we are still technically in the winter months, but this is really, really putting off a lot of new growth. You can see all of it right here. So I'm really excited about this, but still have to be patient. I have this Syngonium erythrophyllum Yanocarti Road, which has that really wonderful like red underside, as you can see with this leaf right here that's flipped over. This is my smaller one of the two, but that's because I chopped this one back. It had some really, really long vines, and as I said, I struggle with Syngoniums holding onto their foliage, so it was only having like these long vines with like 5 or 6 leaves on the end of them, so I cut them back and let them regrow, and now this is what I have here. So I know it's kind of hard to see because there's a couple other philodendrons in the way. I have this Philodendron Burl Marx, just your standard Philodendron Burl Marx. This is just like a classic landscape houseplant. Some houseplant stores will get this in for an expensive price because it's not because they're trying to charge you a lot for it, but it's because the places that they're getting it from are trying to upcharge them for it. But if they're buying it from like a landscape retailer or something like that, or from Florida or something, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So you might see this houseplant for an expensive price, but you're also probably going to find it for ridiculously cheap. So just something to bear in mind. I would probably wait till you find it on a little bit of a cheaper end because it's a great philodendron, but to be honest, it's really nothing to write home about. It is really cool though. It's just not worth paying the extra money for it, for certain. And then I have this Philodendron Jerry Horne, which thank you everybody for helping me identify this. I've been struggling. I bought this as a Mexicanum from Glass Houseworks, that place that I said does not really do a great job with IDing their houseplants. Sorry, I'm probably not doing the best job of showing you this. But you guys helped me ID this, and I really appreciate that. And this is another one that's been growing up to my ceiling. It's grown pretty incredibly. I have it down with a couple other aroids in this new shelf that I said I got. I just got this one to, you know, it's a little bit lower for all these Hoyas, so the grow lights are really close to it. It looks basically exactly like the other one. I don't even know why I'm pointing this out to you guys. It really doesn't matter. But there is a bunch more on this trellis. Speaking of, the other main one that's up here is a Syngonium chiapense. And this has definitely held on to its foliage a little better than the other Syngoniums, but it still has that issue. Like you see my Philodendron Jerry Horn right here, even while the older foliage is not as large and beautiful as the new foliage, it has its foliage from all the way down the plant all the way up, still to this day. But the Syngonium chiapense here probably goes up about, wow, that's like 4 feet, I would say, before it starts putting off the foliage. So it still looks fantastic, no complaints. It's freaking gorgeous, but definitely one. I don't know if that's a user error from my part. Maybe I wasn't watering enough at some point, but I've been pretty on top of this one. It's in a pretty, a spot that I hit pretty often with the watering can. And then this one that's in front of everything else is a Philodendron Jose Buono. I'm pretty sure this was sold as a Philodendron Imbi variegata, but I don't think that's it. I'm pretty sure it makes much more sense for it to be a Jose Buono. There is a Philodendron Pedatum over here. Getting a little blurry, I apologize. This is kind of all over the place as well. Also has some foliage up on the trellis. I really enjoy it. The leaves aren't getting that big for me, but I kind of appreciate that. I don't know if it's supposed to grow like this. I'm seeing larger pedatums, let's put it that way, but I'm not mad at this. I think it's actually kind of adorable. And I do have a Philodendron tripartitum as well. I really love this Philodendron. Just these plain green, 3-parted leaves, as the name suggests. It looks very similar to like the Syngonium aureatum in a way, as it's just like a very plain plant, but there's just a lot to love about it. It's putting off some new growth down here, but it doesn't have those lobes yet, so it does take some time to put off those lobes that I would say this houseplant is most notable for. But this also isn't really a popular philodendron as far as I'm aware, but I think it deserves a little bit more popularity. We got a couple more, let's see. So I have a Philodendron Pink Princess right here. Philodendron ERUBESCENS Pink Princess. And this is one that I have just like chopped a bunch off my other plant, which is actually right here and looks a lot more underwhelming. The variegation is not nearly as pronounced, but this is the one that I just continuously chopped plants off of to make this one over here, which obviously has some really much more nice variegation. But you know, this houseplant doesn't knock my socks off. There's better pink plants out there, but I know it's a really popular one, so I still have to, of course, share it with you guys. And I'm like thinking, do I have anything else? I'm sure I have a couple more over here. Let's just go check at least. So I see right here, there's another Philodendron Florida. This one I've had for a couple years, and it's growing similar to that manner of like that pedatum over there where the leaves are coming in much smaller, but like how freaking adorable is that? I don't know if that's gonna get in focus, but let's get up here. How adorable is that? How adorable is that? It's like the size of my hand. Like, I'm not mad at all. Once again, why would I even be mad if my houseplants stay small anyway? Because it takes up a lot less space than the big ones. As magical as the big houseplants are, I struggle to find space for them. I know we have another Syngonium erythrophyllum Yanocarty Road here. It's coming off a lot brighter. I don't know if you can see with my eyes, not the camera lens. It's really, really dark. It's like this really, really dark, nearly black, like kind of like almost navy blue color going on, and then there's the pink on the, or the purple reddish wine color on the back, but it's kind of getting a little blown out from the light. I think that's everything. I'm like, I might as well just show you this Amydrium zippolanianum. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. That I've been growing for a couple years now because it is an aroid in its own category. But you can see the leaves are really funky. They look like palm fronds. So, of course, I have to mention that too. But I think that's it. No, I have one more. There's this, I just got this and it's acclimating, so it doesn't look that hot, but it's a Themattophyllum sprucianum. This used to be called a Philodendron goldii, and it's really acclimating to my home. I just got it like right at the end of the fall. It's not looking so hot. You can see this leaf burned hard from the window here. But it's new growth that looks sad, but I can feel it that once it puts off like a leaf or two, it's gonna start looking real sexy. So we just gotta be patient. It's totally fine. I've played this game before, but I think at this point, that is everything. Thank you all so much for joining me today on this houseplant tour of my entire philodendron collection and my Syngonium collection, lest we forget. Next time we will go back to the normal format of houseplant show and tell, where I just politely sit here and share my houseplant collections with you guys of all the different genera that I have in my home. I think we've just got the heavy hitters out of the way with these last two tours. So thank you again for joining me. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at phillyfoliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great time.